Let me record.
Dan, start the recording.
Here we go.
So happy Saturday morning, afternoon, evening. I don't see any of our Australians on yet or Japanese, so I don't have to say happy tomorrow morning. I
Yeah.
see some familiar faces. I see some new faces. Well, actually, new faces to the Zoom session, which is great. This morning we are going to delve into one of our what I think a lot of them have been successful to our non-technical things, non-choreographic, non-showmanship sessions. We have a presenter that's tuned in on one or two of our things, um, but is mostly from, as Tony Parks told us about many weeks ago, the parallel world of contra and traditional dancing, um, and this gentleman started in the early 70s doing contra dancing, and 40 years ago has been, for the last 40 years, has been calling contra dances traditional squares, English country dances, etc. Um, he was president of the Country Dance and Song Society, CDSS, is that what it's called? Yeah, that's the acronym. Taught in numerous of their camps, both here in the US and in Europe. Um, and now is, I guess, for the last 10 years ago, we started this project to put a lot of good stuff online
Wow.
as a resource for us. Hannah has joined Lars. Good morning to Hannah. Um, and a thing called the Square Dance History Project.org, which supposedly covers, or I mean, does include lots of contras, traditional, and Western style, and combines them all into one place. We have quite three or four good reference places that I go to regularly, and David's is one of them. And he has two helpers, consultants, I don't know what, but Tony Parks in the traditional end and Jim Mayo in the Western side of it. And anyway, I guess I should let David continue from here. But let's have a big hand from New Hampshire for David Millstone. David, thank you for agreeing to be with us and have fun, entertain us,
Entertain you.
teach
Yeah,
us.
da da da. So, yeah, I started as a contra dance caller, and at the time I was dancing contras. Squares were traditional squares were part of the repertoire, and callers such as Tony Parks and Ted Sinella and others influenced me. And then much later, which is to say 1987, I started dancing English country dance, and I've been calling that since 93. And then I've done hundreds, as many of you probably have, of hay bale gigs, weddings and parties and PTO dances, Friday night family dances, things like that. So I made a video about Bob McQuillan, a noted contra dance musician, some 20 years ago, and made a video about Dudley Lothman, a documentary, and had stayed away from square dance videos until I made one about Ralph Sweet. And Ralph, in addition to being well known in the contra dance world, had spent 20 years as a modern Western square dancer with his barn there in Hazardville, Connecticut. And in the course of making the film about Ralph, I was able to work in a lot of information about modern square dancing because it was part of his career. And since the audience for most of my documentaries have been contra dancers, it was a way of telling them just how big modern squares had been. Contra dancers get excited when they have 500 people in a hall doing a contra medley. And this was a way to tell them about square dance events where there were 800 squares in a room dancing, and you could see the eyeballs do the math and sort of, whoa. And working on Ralph's video got me interested in sharing more about the square dance world. And so I told my wife, well, it's now more than 10 years, but I said, I've got a new project, at which point she rolled her eyes. And I said, no, this is only going to take 10 years or until I die. And we've passed the 10-year point. I'm still alive. And I'm happy that Country Dance and Song Society has agreed to take it on, to take it over, to keep it online. At the moment, there are about close to 2,000 items. It's a digital library, and we're going to take a look at it. And I was happy to hear that. When the project started, well, let's see if I can bring this up. Share screen, and I want to do this. Let's see if that shows up. So you're seeing 6 photos of 6 guys there? Is that coming through?
Yes.
Great. So these are my, I call them my central committee. Jim down here has been my guide to the world of modern square dancing. Tony, you've already met. Each of them is sort of an expert in different areas. Tony is the quintessential New England caller. Bill Lichman here, former president of the Lloyd Shaw Foundation, deeply immersed in traditional Western squares. Bob Dulcimer had done research in West Virginia and is a well-known caller. Started in Baltimore, was the music and dance director at the John C. Campbell Folk School in North Carolina. Larry Edelman knows a lot about Western squares and squares of the 50s, that transitional era moving from traditional to modern. And Phil Jameson is an authority on Southern Appalachian squares. So they've been really helpful over the years, helping me learn about this. So I think the best thing is to show you the site, and then we'll Square Dance History Project. There we go, share. All right, so let's see if this comes up here. If you go to the about, this is squaredancehistory.org. You can also do squaredancehistory.com or .net. We were told when we started it that if we didn't register the other domain names and our site became popular, which it has, people would take the other sites and turn them into porn sites. So we own all 3 domains, .org, .com, .net. When you go to about and sponsors, you can see CDSS was our first, and Caller Lab also joined. And one of the things that's really cool about this site is that we are Catholic in our tastes, wide ranging. It includes traditional and modern, and that's emphasized by CDSS and Caller Lab being co-sponsors. Lloyd Shaw, also from the more traditional side, and Arts Dance, the Alliance Around Traditional and Square Dance, are also more from the modern side. The other thing you can read here about our consultants, there's little bios of Bob and Larry, et cetera, et cetera. So, so let's go back to home, and here we are. Actually, I want to show you one other thing before, so I want to stop this share and share a different screen, which is something that I created a year or so ago. Is there was at the time sorry, stop share screen, Hall of Fame. There we go. That's what we want. And there it is. So are you getting the Square Dance Hall of Fame? Is that showing up for you?
Yes.
Yes.
We are indeed.
And if you do a search, if you just enter Square Dance Hall of Fame, you'll find that there was no site that talked about the members of the Square Dance Hall of Fame. I was looking on Caller Lab and elsewhere, and I could find names of individuals, but so now there is. And on the site, you can sort by ABC order, you can sort by the date they were installed in the Hall of Fame. And so you scroll down through, and here are the 30-some members of the Hall of Fame. And I don't know, let's take Bob Van Antwerp, 1970. So on a given page, you'll see the Gene Anthony portrait of that person, the text that Bob Osgood wrote about this individual as it appeared. You can get the Millstone Award certificate, the text of that all in one place. You can hear a little bit of the caller.
It's 2 and 4, lead out to the right and circle up 4, ring 'em all out, make a line, walk up to the...
So is the audio coming through?
Yes.
Great. You can link to an interview that Bob Brundage did with that person. It'll take you back to the Square Dance Foundation of New England. And Bob did us all an incredible service with these interviews. They're well over 100. And there's the audio of the interview with Bob Van Antwerp, and there's also a transcription of it. What else do we have here? There's more photos, and then it links you back to the Square Dance History Project for more information. And we have 6 items tagged with Bob Van Antwerp in our site. So the Square Dance, the Hall of Fame is a nice site, and it's nice to have it available. So if you're interested in learning more about these key figures in modern Square Dance history, that's a good place to go. So let's go back to the Square Dance history site. Share site. There we are. All right. So once you're on the site, you have all sorts of ways of navigating it. As I mentioned, there's close to 2,000 items in it. You can click on browse items. 1,843 items at the moment. And it's all available. It's free. It's a public digital library. And more gets added when I find myself with more material or more time. We can, let's see, let's go into the search function, which is over here. This little magnifying glass is your generic search. And I'm trying to move this over here. So you'll see here all different ways to search. It's actually a pretty good search engine. It's built into the program. So search by collection. I'm going to go to Modern Western Square Dance. So everything in our 1,800 things that we've entered as part of Modern Western Squares now comes up, and you click in a blank window and hit return. All right, so we have 476 items that are modern Western. And with, I want to go back, I'm sorry. Here we are, we're modern Western, and I'm going to search by type. So I'm going to go to moving images. So everything that's modern Western Square moving image, I'll click in a blank field and hit return. And we end up with 109. And so there's 9 on a given page, a dozen on a given page. And let's go to the next page and see what we can, here. This is a moment of embarrassment, perhaps. So here's someone you all know.
Around, you know it. You're gonna get out over and swing that man around and round you go. Join all your hands and circle up, I say. Out in that corner, weave the ring now. There must be some.
And with each clip, I mean, you can go from that to YouTube. But one of the nice things about looking at it here is you get a lot of information that we've entered. It mentions Don as being a founder of Tech Squares, and that's highlighted, so it'll take you to more information about Tech Squares. And then there's item relations down here, so there's something about Don's background, etc. So let me go back to where we were just looking. Another one that turns up, oh, there's the patter call for him. Oh, here, some of you have probably seen this, but this was Lee Cotman appearing on the Phil Donahue show in 1980. And
I want to just show them the long shot, Ronnie. Are we going to have fun today? Is this the happiest looking crowd of people? I have never met a depressed square dancer. You enjoy it, obviously.
Very much so.
You're married?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. We just want to set it straight here. But,
so this goes through, it's an hour-long show, and it's an extraordinary show. It's wonderful dancing. Lee Cotman is calling and is in fine form. So you could look on YouTube and find it, but it's often easier to find things on this site. I want to go back here, go to the next page. We've got 10 pages of videos here, and here's those of you who know something about the early years know that Bob Osgood played an important role in promoting modern Western squares. In the right around 1950, he had a television show, and let's see if we can.
Everybody in your places with a smile on your faces, loosen up your collar bands, tighten up your traces. We're on the air with another square, so let's everybody dance. Honor your partner. Lady by your side. A fortune star in the center of the square. To the opposite lady and you leave us there. Star right back in the center of the center. And you're on, you're not through yet. Star right back in the center of the town. To the right hand lady with the left hand round. Star right back in the center of the floor. To the left hand.
What I love there is this is early Bob Osgood. And when he's just talking, he's so awkward. And then he launches into the show and all the patter that he has learned from Lloyd Shaw. And it's just like boom, 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 boom. And of course, Osgood goes on to become very comfortable public speaker, a real prominent force in the spread of modern squares. So while we're still on this, let's just jump on page 4. Oh, right. Bob Ruff, a whole series of films that he made about teaching, and he's using kids.
4 ladies chain, grand chain across, turn 'em, you chain 'em back. Everybody join hands, circle up 8 and 8, hand rings, circle to the left. Reverse, single file, lady in the lead.
And we have the audio, we have additional Bob Ruff material. And I wanted to play a little of this clip. Mildred Bueller was another, she was a Northern California caller in 1950. This was made in 51. And then she moved to England, where she was instrumental in promoting modern squares, or what became modern squares in England. But she had a demonstration group, and we were able to get the footage. When the Square Dance History Project started, our goal was really to get as many moving images as possible. The theory was you can read about dancing, you can listen to audio, but the best way to understand a particular dance style is to see it. So here's an example of her demo group.
Today, people of all ages from all over America are square dancing. Taking the dance from our grandmother's day and adding a modern touch, we now find the delightful form of square dancing, which hundreds of thousands of Americans across the country are enjoying as their favorite pastime.
I'm going to just jump ahead here.
We now invite you to watch one group from Redwood City, California, as they engage in this very delightful form of recreation. On your partner. You join your hand, you circle wide. You go and roam the other way back. On a jet set round to take that track. And you meet your road with the right-hand word. It's an out man left with a ball and girl. And a right here, honey, go round that ring and hand over hand and say, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, you meet your honey and both you go. Promenade, now don't be slow. Now the first and third, you swing with pride. And you zigzag around and through, not two on the side. You meet at the opposite, you sashay through, let's say. Not swing you way, jump out through here, they're the one who keeps the lead.
And there's a wonderful version of the teacup chain that they're dancing. So this is 1950. So it's basically 5 or 6 years after the teacup chain was invented. So that was all just, let's go back to our
I just
homepage.
like to toss in for the sake of
Yep.
history and whatever. That was 147 beats a minute. Holy cow.
Yeah, we have traditional fiddler, I'm blanking on his name now. Come on. Bob Holt from Ozarks, Missouri, regularly played at 145, and we've got footage of him playing at 154 for just a social dance in Missouri, and people are jigging to it. So it moves. So let's see here. All right, so we're back home. In our search file, I'm back here. We've got keywords, specific fields. I wanted to do
right now. We have the Zoom. It's almost like your Zoom window is obscuring a large portion of the screen there.
All right, let's get rid of this.
There we go.
All right, so there's that. All right, so there we go. All right, thank you. So we can also search by tags down here. And so you can think about, well, I happen to know that Joe Louis is there. So if we call up Joe Louis, we have 18 items that were tagged with his name for one reason or another. And so here's some patter of Joe calling in 1964.
Do what the caller says.
Oh, a live recording.
Swing through pattern, I'd do this one. Slide ladies to the right chain. You turn to the left. I mean, if I was dancing out there. Heads up to the middle and do-side-do you do. Go full around and swing through and star through and do-side-do the outside too and swing through and star through. Go on to the next do-side-do.
So a chance to hear audio and a lot of live audio, which gives you a different sense of a caller. I mean, you all have access to their commercial recordings, but a studio recording and a live recording gives you a different picture. So here's a Joe Louis, a caller's class that he was leading. So some week you can just tune out Don and go listen to Joe Louis. Why would you
be getting carried away and he'll be off on remote control, and you'll say something and he'll wander clear to another square. Well, this is fate. But when a lot of people suddenly do the same thing wrong, the caller did it. No one else. It was the caller's. He might have used poor judgment. He might have used something that was too hard. But he probably slobbed over a word or gave it one beat too soon or one beat too late. And that's just enough to throw the people who are already one beat late and you gave the call one beat too soon. That's enough that they skip that call and do the next one you say.
So there's that. Here's the description of it. And you'll notice down under item relations, that here's a Les Gocher caller's class. And Joe Louis and Les Gocher are going to be approaching the subject from very different perspectives. So you can listen to that. You can go to a session with Ed Gilmore. Here's a piece by Jim Mayo. I want to go back to the earlier Joe Louis. Let's see, page 2. of Joe Louis. Right, so here's movie footage of Joe Louis coming to Australia in 1952 as part of the square dance boom reaching Australia.
It's the Alabama Jubilee. Poor little ladies promenade inside the rain.
52, a great crowd. Great Joe Louis, the square dance caller from America. He was arriving by TAA plane. Here he comes, great excitement. At this stage there were 2,000 people a night going to Earl's Court for square dancing. Here's some of the crowd. Here comes Joe Louis, great square dance caller down the gangplank, met by John Brennan, the promoter, Barry Brennan.
Right. And so if you're interested in tracking that, well, you can see here under item relations, here's more about Australian square dancing. And one thing I mean, the Square Dance History Project, if you're interested in this stuff, is a rabbit hole. I mean, you go down the tunnel and on, and I tried to build in links to as many things as I could so that it just goes on and on. I want to show a couple more things, and then I thought we'd just sort of see what people are interested in, and we'll work our way through. Go back to page 1 of Let's see if I can just retrace my steps here. Back. Page 2, page 1. Oh, I want to call your attention. We have a link to this Square Dance live recordings. Some of you may know about this. This is on the Internet Archive, where the Square Dance Foundation of New England, Jim Mayo, John Wedge, and others played a key role with this. This links, here we are on our website, Square Dance History Project, but if you click here, Square Dance Live Recordings, it takes you to the Internet Archive, where we have 281 live recordings of Square Dance. And this is not just, here's Dick Steele, an hour and 51 minutes. John Hendren, an advanced class, 13 minutes. It just goes. So you pick a caller you're interested in listening to. And I mean, I'm not a modern caller, but some of these, mostly guys, Gloria Rios Roth and a few other women, some of these callers have extraordinary vocal skills. And you can go here and listen and just absorb the patter, the flow of their calls, the melodic quality of their voices. It's just amazing. So I had that. I want to show you a couple more things. Let's go back here. So I know that I happen to know, I wrote it down, I can go to item number 374 and click on that. And here we are. This is something that we put together. We sent a videographer years ago, 2011, to a C4 weekend in the Berkshires, where Clark Baker and Vic Cedar were calling, and had talked to Vic about doing this ahead of time. And so he put together a program with all the different dance programs mixed in. So there's one section of mainstream, one section of plus, one of A1, A2, but not in order. So you're just watching people dance, and
Hey, bow to the partner, your corner two in the heads, wheel through, touch a quarter, extend, boys swing through, girls you turn back and chain reaction, star halfway, Centers walk and dodge. Some work couples of 3 and all do a quarter through.
I'm going to just skip ahead somewhere.
Boy run around the girl, the boys cast off 3/4 diamonds. Diamonds circulate, girls left swing through. Flip the diamond, take a peek, trade the wave. Alaman left, we're out there, and then they get back home. That must have been the hard C4. Head split square through. On the third hand, grand swing and mix. Initially twice, central little more. Transfer the column.
And you can watch all 10 minutes. And if you want, you can cheat and see, because we've written down here where the different calls are. But you could watch the program and say, oh, that's A1, oh, that's A2, and just it. And previous item, coming out of that weekend, our videographer put together a half-hour show about challenge dancing, and several people have said it's a really good presentation of what challenge is about. We have a description here and a link to an article that Clark wrote about challenge dancing. So couple more things here under how this works. So browse subject. If you click on browse subject, you see all the different categories of how we have things organized in the history project. So you could go into modern square dance, you could go into plus, and we have 24 items about that. You could go back into maybe you're interested in learning more about where it comes from different places, maritime. So up in New Brunswick and Newfoundland, there's an extraordinary, I'll go to it. I know it's on page 3. Let's get rid of this, make this smaller, right? Page 1, 2, 3. Right here, this thing called Runnin' the Goat is a traditional square dance from Newfoundland. The full dance runs 17 minutes. And so this is a sequence that there's no calling. The dancers have just learned this sequence. Let me just start it here. You can check the tempo on this one. Jumping ahead. It's exhausting to watch, and I can only imagine what it must be and how fun it must have been to dance. What did you get for a tempo on that?
So I was seeing the band was all over the place. Well,
yeah,
all over the place, but around 184.
Okay, yeah, it's fast. It's fast. It's fast.
It's fast.
So traditional. Let's see. Transitional Western, that sort of magical period going from traditional Western into modern, is if you have contra dancers who like to do square dancing, they tend to like to do squares from this era, where the vocabulary isn't quite as, I was going to say crazy, it's not quite as complex as it becomes in the late 60s and 70s. But the choreography gets really interesting. And you can see we've got 200 items in here from that. Page 3, 18, page 1, 2, 3, one of the things we have here are Don Armstrong's square dance workbooks. So these are from the mid-50s. If you're interested in seeing what square dance calling was like at that time, we have, with Don Armstrong, Marie Armstrong, his widow, gave us permission to put these up. So it's an extraordinarily deep look at what was going on then. And here, beginner square, page 3. Oh, so Marie gave us permission. So here, I'm going to go back to my search, and I'm going to search for Marie Armstrong.
Yep, she called too.
Right, exactly. So Marie called. We have an interview with her. And here's Patter, here's Don and Marie calling. Here's Trail of the Lonesome Pine. So we click on that, and at the start.
Now you bow to your partners and to your corners all. Join up hands, circle to the left around that hall.
So that's Don calling. And if we go up to about a minute, we've got Marie.
On the trail of that lonesome pine.
Head to gents, take your corner, girl, go into the middle and back. Same 4 circle left around that track. Make a left-hand star, go home.
It was a great tape find.
Around your own. Element left with your corner, girl, then go back home. Dose.
So we have that. Over here, we have some of Don's commercial recordings. We have video of the dance being called here. We know that Don took the figures from a traditional, well, a Ralph Page dance, and that's a dance called Jensen Corners. And here's a video link to Jensen Corners being called by Tony Parks. So you can see the dance that Don took and set to music before it was set to music.
Bow to your partner. Swing your partner. Now bow to your corner. Swing your corner. With the next corner, do an Alaman lift. The one you just swung, turn to the right, all the way around a little bit more. Your own partner, turn to the left and promenade. Go round the set. It's called a sound check. Pensions, take your corner lady, go into the middle.
So one last thing. So you can go into your search and combine. So say you're interested in, I'm going to put in singing squares. Singing square turns up because it's in the collection. But I want to go back. Sorry, I didn't mean to hit that so soon. Singing square. And then we're going to stay in the modern Western square dance. And we only want audio files. So that would be type, would be sound. So let's see what we've got of modern Western singing squares with audio only. And we'll click on just an empty thing and hit return. And so we have 50 examples of that. And some of you may be surprised to know that Les Gocher, the hash master, actually called singing squares because we've got him making whoopee. This is not what he was known for.
4 ladies chained across the set. Now whirl away, then circle left, left element now, ran right and left now. You're making whoopee. And to meet this girl and to catch all 8 with the right hand half. Now back to the left.
And you'll note up here in the description, we talk a little bit about that. And then here's the same dance called by Gloria Rios Roth. It's the same recording, but it's her calling it. So it's 2 different callers.
It'll be a long while yet, but come next woodland season, we go by woodland seasons in our place, up there in Westville. By next woodland season, we ought to have another edition. 4 ladies chant. Go across the set, then you whirl away. You circle left, left Alaman now. Grand right and left now. You're making whoopee. Gonna meet that girl with a catch-all 8 by the
All right. So let's get out of this. Close that down. And what I'd like to do is hear from some of you something you're interested in. Let's see what we can find on that particular topic. Sort of do an interactive here. So, what's something someone would like to look for or see, and we'll just sort of go through it together.
Well, I can start with something. And I went to high school in Newtown, Connecticut. And one of my classmates was Russell Hendrickson. And I have learned later, and I don't remember his father's first name, but that his father was a fairly well-known traditional caller.
Chip Hendrickson. Yeah, I danced to him. So let's see if he's in there.
Yes.
That was a rhetorical. So we have 6 things here. So here's Chip Hendrickson leading a square dance callers workshop at the 1988. That must have been the first or second Ralph Page weekend. Turns out he's in the live recordings. Here, Bob Dulcimer is teaching, calling the Tin Lizzy quadrille, which is one that Chip had resurrected. Here's his call book. Here's Chip Hendrickson's call book. So from 1955, these are the singing calls that were part of his repertoire. What else do we have? That came from Walter Lenk's site. And cool. In the first cover, this is an Ed Gilmore album. In the first cover, cool. In the first cover, Chip Hendrickson is on the left, right? So there's Chip Hendrickson on the cover of an Ed Gilmore album. All right, so great. Who's got something?
That's Al Brundage on the right.
Say that again?
That's Al Brundage on the right.
Right
with
here.
Mary, his first wife.
Thanks, Jim. Cool. So what else can we look for?
Yeah, I've got one.
Yep.
Do you have anything with Chris Veer?
Veer?
Veer, Chris Veer.
Spell it.
I think it's just Veer. I think. Caller in the 70s.
Yeah.
Really, really good caller.
Nope, not here. But
British. He was British originally.
Yeah.
Then he came to America.
Let's try this. Let's do
VEAR.
VEAR.
Yeah, maybe that's right.
Nope, he's not there. So what I'd think would be to go to that Internet Archive site and see, except if he was British, I think the live recording, all the live recordings were done here in the US, weren't they?
Yes, I did them.
So did you do one of Chris Veer?
No.
Okay, so sorry.
That's okay. I mean, Chris, he died young.
Yeah.
Like in his 50s.
But here's the thing: if you ever find anything like that and you think it's worth sharing, let me know and we'll add it to the collection. That's how a lot of these things get put up here. Great. What's something else?
David,
How about Melton Luttrell?
Oh, we've got Melton Luttrell. I know he's in here.
He made a Blue Top fly. I talked to him on the phone 2 weeks ago, I guess.
All right, so we've got him leading a session in 1987.
How about the Blue Tail Fly?
This is not him calling. This is Bill Lichman calling in Belgium, calling Blue Tail Fly using figures that Melton used on his. So if you want to hear Luttrell, it would be that one. Photos, this one, and then we've got the Visit with the Legends. So this is he's one of the speakers here with Flippo, Jerry Helt, and Bob Brundage. So it's a chance to.
Welcome to the 39th Caller Lab Convention. This session is titled A Visit with the Legend.
The one that I loved and that I learned a lot from was his session of Blue Bonnet Squares, which is when he's paying tribute to Herb Gregerson, and talking about him and calling dances from Gregerson's.
Today's emphasis will be on the callers of the Herb Gregerson era.
And there and patting their foot to the music. The number one couple would lead to the couple on their right, but on the near side, so that the lady goes to the right of the boy, that's his left arm, and single file, the boy follows his partner, number one couple only, around that couple. Hold it. Be sure you go to the near side. Hold it, right behind them. Stop right behind them. Now then, the lady is going to continue to walk forward around that couple, but the boy is going to step through the couple so that he becomes the leader.
It's a lady round two and the gent cut through kind of feel. So it's a 54. So between the two clips here, there's an hour and a half of Melton Luttrell in a live session calling, and you can hear when the dancers have it and when they don't. And in my mind, I live recordings are the sort of gold standard, because it's not something that you've rehearsed in a studio. It's real people in real time, real audiences, real callers, and you get to hear what works. You get to hear when they have to backtrack and make mistakes and fix it.
David, I'm not particularly looking for a particular what you have in there, but first of all, I want to thank you for this amazing resource. I've used it to look at a lot of things, but there's a lot more I want to go play with now that you pointed things out that I just hadn't explored before. And I guess my question to you is, did you do all the indexing and all the tagging and links?
Yes, he did.
Yes.
It's amazing. It's amazing what you've done.
Yep.
And I guess my question is, when this gets turned over to the CDSS, I know they'll maintain and keep it up, but do they have somebody that's willing to continue to add stuff like you have? Because you've done an amazing job. I really
I'm pleased with what we've got here. Someone who's starting a different site but using the same program that we're using here said, looking back 10 years, do you wish you had done anything differently? They were trying to figure out how to set up their site. And I said, yeah, I wish I had worked harder at trying to find someone who was interested in doing the work. And it's the limitation. And I haven't been able to find someone who has, I guess I have broad interests. I mean, I'm really interested in traditional, but I value modern Western. And my friendship with Jim has been really great because we each appreciate the world that the other has lived in. And
let me add a comment on that. This is the only place that I'm aware of where traditional and modern have been treated as part of a single activity. It's been a long-standing hope of mine. I started in traditional before modern became a thing. And this site is the only place I know of where traditional and modern are all regarded as part of a single activity. I am deeply appreciative of David's work on it, and he's put in a huge amount of effort. I've been a proud contributor and participant, but it's an outstanding accomplishment.
Yeah. I keep looking. What I'd love to find is someone considerably younger who'd be interested in continuing to add to it and bring the same breadth. I mean, we didn't get into it all, the historical. There's information about the quadrilles and the cotillion, the cotillon, dances from the 1700s. I mean, we're trying to cover the waterfront here with a few exceptions. There's not information on Caribbean quadrilles, and that's a thing. There's not much information on historical quadrilles from Europe, but So if you know someone, I'm coming from the traditional side. If you know someone in, maybe one of you in this call would be interested, and coming from the Western side, beefing that side up, it's not as strong. But also being open to continuing that. I'm sure CDSS would be thrilled to have someone willing to take that on. And as I travel around, I get to call at camps, and this summer I'm giving a week-long dance history session as part of my work at a dance camp. I'll be saying, if there's someone who's leaning in, looks really interested, would you be interested in learning how to do it? The tech work is not, it's not complicated. It just takes time.
I was chuckling to myself in my mind of, gee, there's so much in here. If I started listening at one end and went all the way through, even though it's not linear, it may take 3 lifetimes.
It would take a while.
It'd be fun lifetimes, though.
Yeah.
First of all, I have 2 more quick comments. One is for you Western callers. One of my gripes these days is that in patter music, people have the music sort of in the background, but don't really use the music to call. At least an awful lot of people just call over whatever's going on. And if you go back and listen to some of those callers or some of those full dances that were recorded that you linked to, that was in the New England Square Dance, the Square Dance New England Foundation, and listen to how, and I just did that yesterday again, and listen to how people use the music, even some that aren't the most entertaining callers, but at least they use the music when they're patter calling a lot more. Go back and listen to some of those and emulate that.
You could do worse than to go to the callers in the Hall of Fame and then go from them back. I mean, one that I love is a guy named Arnie Cronenberger, who just has the most mellifluous voice. I mean, fast tempos. He seems to like fast tempos. They're often in the 140 range. But they're just one. Al Brundage has a great voice. I mean, and he's got a great sense of humor that comes out in his calling.
David, when I was trying to figure out how to do patter calling, I had only done singing calls for 2 years. And I was working with a colleague, Jerry Carmen, who recently passed away. And Jerry was going to some coaching from, oh God, you mentioned his name, who's got the barn in Connecticut.
Ralph Sweet.
He went to a Ralph Sweet thing. And Ralph told him to go to the Sets in Order records and listen to the people you liked and try and emulate the style that they did.
Yep.
And the person that I picked out was Arnie Cronenberger. I really liked what he was doing. So my other question is, do you have the Sets in Order records in there?
We don't. We have selections, but we don't have the complete Sets in Order. But those, I think, are available on the Internet Archive. I think those are available on the Internet Archive, not in the live recordings, but and those are so widely available. I mean, they're among the records Jim and I keep getting. We're listed as the contact people. So we get emails all the time from people saying, oh, my grandfather died or my parents died. And, would you be interested in their records? And no, the University, the Square Dance Foundation of New England gave more than 20,000 records to UNH. The University of Denver has the Bob Osgood collection and the Lloyd Shaw archives. So a lot of that is already available. If any of you are out there and want records, let me and Jim know, and we'll be happy to put people in touch with you, because not a month goes by where someone says, we've got all these records and we don't want to throw them in the dumpster. So
I haven't passed away yet, but I have a set of Sets in Order records that I realize I'm trying to thin my collection of stuff out.
Yeah.
If there are any people that want to pay postage.
And a note on that, because I tried duplicating a whole bunch of records, or tried recording a whole bunch of records, and of course at that point I didn't know about different needle shapes that Hilton's used and all of that. But records are eligible for the media mail rates, which means they are actually dirt cheap to send. but I have sent a couple out at full postage rates, and that's not dirt cheap.
Right. Tony Parks just found someone in San Diego who does digitizing of 78s and cleans it up. And he just sent out 10 78s carefully packaged according to specs to get some favorite recordings of his cleaned up so that he can use them when he's calling from recordings.
And yeah, the Internet Archive is especially interested in 78s. So.
Yes. And they will, if you have a large collection of 78s, they will do the digitizing free. You have to get it to them. But when they play a record, they have a turntable with 4 arms on it with 4 different needles. So they're recording it at different tech specs, and they make all those available. And then they pick one that they think is the best. So you can go to a given album on the Internet Archive, a given recording, and hear 9 different versions of it. And those are available for download.
The
Larry,
one thing they don't do is clean up the record
Correct.
in any way. You know, if you want to do that, it's on you.
Right. Yeah, Larry Edelman has a collection that he sent to the Internet Archive, and it's like 1,000 recordings of traditional squares. So I'm sure if someone wants to take the sets in order and digitize it, make it available. The Internet Archive is a great place to store things because they're not constantly changing the URL. So you can refer back to it and it stays consistent. University libraries are great, but they have the unfortunate habit of wanting to change. They get a new IT person in and they change how they categorize things. And then all your old links don't work. So
if somebody wants to know how to clean up their own records, we had somebody do a nice session on the free app Audacity about 1.5 years ago, and even though I'd used Audacity, I learned quite a few additional things on cleaning up old scratches and such. So
yeah, Audacity has a built-in click repair.
But he showed a little more than just the click repair. There's how to get a background noise level and filter that part out also. Anyway, there's a good session in the archive of our Saturday sessions. This is number 75, 76 or 77 already. This is great. We're close enough to the hour that I'm going to do the usual thing of thanking you guys all for coming and contributing, and I hope we'll hang around for contributing more. Thank you, David, in particular, for presenting this and making us aware of it. As I already did, thank you for the site itself. Thanks, Jim and Tony, for helping them with the site. We're going the other direction next week. Ed Foote will be doing some more on the technical choreography end. And hopefully, Jim, you're going to, now that you've got a connection working, we'll come in with your passionate thing, which I think is probably going to be about bringing sociability back into this, but whatever you want to do. And so again, as usual, if you have other things planned for your Saturday morning, afternoon, evening, feel free to leaving without offending anybody. But much more than that, feel free to hang around because I'm sure there's a lot more people that have some good discussions to go on this.
Yeah, and I want to thank you all for coming. It's really, my wife said, who are you talking to today? And I said, I'm talking to a group of modern square dance callers. And she gave me this look and said, oh, that's a different group. And it's fun because that's the point, is this is here for everybody. And I'm delighted that you now know a little bit more about it. And tell your friends because it's a resource. We get a fair amount of traffic. The videos that we have up on YouTube attract their own people, and people coming to this site. We'll get 20,000 people coming in a month and picking out different things, and that's the idea. It's a library. It's a resource for all of us. So, and if you, my email is davidmillstone7@gmail.com.
And if you 7?
Number 7, numeral 7, David Millstone 7 nothing in there, just davidmillstone7@gmail.com. And if you know of a resource that you think should be on the site, let me know about it. And sometime in the next 10 years, no, I'd love to know about things that you think deserve to be there. So,
David, is there, I mean, I'm thinking of other links, other resources. This is one of 2 or 3 or 4 I go to. One is the Square Dance Foundation of New England. One is Vic Cedars' site.
Yep.
Do you have a list of a page where it lists these other reference places?
No. I mean, the ones you just mentioned are the ones that I go to also.
But it might be nice near the beginning someplace saying similar sites with other
Excellent idea. In fact, Don, you could send me, people could send me the favorite sites that you go to, and we can put together, it would be an item, or it could be near the beginning where people would see it. Thanks.
And I'm just curious now, 10 years or plus ago, you told your wife you were starting on a new project. Is she still with you? Obviously, from what you've been saying before.
Oh, she's here. She's listed. She's watching. She's not showing her face. And in fact, in the last six months to a year, I've been doing less on this project, and I've been turning my attention elsewhere. I gave a bunch of dance history talks, including one on square dance history not too long ago, which is, if you're interested, you can find the recordings of that. It's a total of about 5 hours, 3 sessions, an hour and a half plus each. Just David Millstone and square dance history. You'll find those. And the third session is the one where I look at modern, starting with traditional Western and working into modern. So you might be interested in that. My current project is looking at the revival of traditional squares and contra dancing in the last, basically from the late 60s on, my generation's involvement in this. Finding bands who were early in their community's history playing for contras or squares and who recorded. And at the moment, it's a spreadsheet, but it'll be a map-based interactive website where you can zoom in by time or by geography and find the bands. So for each band, there's a scan of their album cover, whether it's an LP or a cassette or a CD, a clip from that, and then commentary by members of the band about the music and dance scene at that time. I started out thinking, well, I know all the New England bands, which was not true. And let's see who else was out there in the 70s, or early 80s, and figured I'd find another dozen or maybe 2 dozen. Well, the spreadsheet now has about 260 bands in it. And I've been working with a colleague at Dartmouth and with some people in Israel who have developed an amazing map-based site to find a way to share all this. So that's what's taking a lot of time now. So
you mentioned the 3-session thing you did on dance recently. And I want to let other people know that I watched the last 2 of those sessions, and I thought it was really well done and very interesting and entertaining. But what gets me is we've been up to 17, 18 people here today. Sometimes we get up to 25. That particular session had, I think, 104 people on it. And scanning through, I recognized Tony Parks and I think maybe one other person, and that was it. It was mostly from the other side, but you guys, it's on the CDSS website.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. Let's see if I can do this. Zoom. Be right back.
I think I found it by just doing a Google search after the fact.
On what, Tony? On David Millstone?
David Millstone, Square Dance History. I don't remember now how I found it when I wanted to look at it again.
In the chat.
Oh, Clark put it in there. Okay, it's in the chat right now. I've
Super.
found, actually, I'm amazed by Google, and I try to couch my searches into certain things, and finally I say, oh, the heck with it, and I just write out what's on my mind, and Google knows how to find it.
Yeah, artificial intelligence at work.
Don?
Yes, Tony.
Where is the archive of your sessions? Where would I look for the session on Audacity, for instance?
So I have made a YouTube playlist, which I will post shortly in the comments, but it is awful. And one of the things that I need to do is take Don's list and go back through my hundreds of YouTube videos, of which only 70 some odd are related to this, and categorize them and put them on alamandleft.com. So
okay,
that's
so to come then.
Yes, but let me post the playlist at least, and that will be a start on things.
Tony, I will send you that one particularly, but I keep a spreadsheet of presenters, topics, web links, number of people attending, just for myself, so I don't, I thought, geez, I'm going to have to give one. I'll give one on this, and I realized I already had. I only give them when I can't find somebody else to give them. So I'm more than willing to send that out to others. But the basic place that I think to go to is, and I'm not sure exact URL, but the Orange County Callers Association in California has a website that has a page that lists links to all of Mel Wilkerson's things, and down below that, all of ours, except for one or two at the beginning that weren't recorded, and maybe some other series that was going on for a short while.
And I just threw the playlist, which is horrible to search, but is there, and Mark's OC Callers thing in the chat.
Yeah, Mark does a nice job of posting all these things. But I'll send you specifically the one on that, Tony.
Okay, thanks.
Good question. Any other comments? Geez, Daryl, you haven't said anything. Come on, you're a piece of history right there.
Well, I've been so interested in it. I absolutely enjoy these particular sessions. I've got so many questions about how we got to where we are. Don, you know me, I tend to be very analytical about things. And all of this just adds so much to what I've been thinking for so long. Thank you, David. Excellent.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank
Tony,
you.
I appreciate you beyond words.
Well,
it's just so much. Thank you.
Yes, we should have picked one of yours, Daryl's, as well, like when you were at the beginning, to see what you were like.
I'll tell you what, I am very new compared to the ones that were mentioned. Now, I'm very proud of the fact that so many of the ones in the Hall of Fame and around that I didn't know personally and got to interact with, it's just been a wonderful ride, hasn't it, Dawn?
Yeah, but we got to see Dawn's clip. David, is it possible to get a clip of Daryl?
I don't know if I have one, but that if any of you, just write your, the standard thing, write your request on the back of a $20 bill and send. If you find a good clip, let me know. I mean, sometimes it's just you happen to stumble on something, and one of the reasons the History Project started when it did was I had made a movie that I mentioned about Bob McQuillan, and Bob started in 1947 as an accordion player in Ralph Page's band. And I wanted to get stories about Ralph Page, and a lot of the people who danced with Ralph are no longer with us. And the best, what's the line? The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. And if you didn't do it then, do it now. And and looking at modern, so many of the pivotal figures are, Jim Mayo's age. I'm going to pick on Jim. And we want to collect those stories from those people while they're still here. And as those people die and their kids and grandkids go through the attic and find trunks. We had someone the other month who wrote his father had been a caller and left behind hundreds of audio tapes labeled with nice covers, etc. And he was looking for of live recordings. And I put them in touch with the University of Denver, which sounds interested in acquiring the tapes. But I have this nightmare vision that someone's going to go through a trunk in the attic and rolls of Super 8 film and hold it up and say, "Oh, it's that old square dance stuff," and toss it in the dumpster. And that's our history. That's Daryl, you were saying, wondering how we got where we are. That's some of the evidence of. So putting the site up was a way of saying to the world, there are people who care about this. And people, in fact, have found us and said, we have something, would you be interested in? And so we have live recordings from National Square Dance conventions of the 50s because someone's father was there with a good tape recorder, and that person knew that this site existed and passed along the tapes to us. So if you find people who have material, get it digitized and share it. So
I'm really pleased to hear how many hits you have on the site on a regular basis. That's really good.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah.
The
Yolanda?
Yes.
If you want to see a clip, there's probably one of me with visits with the legends.
Okay.
As I recall, it was Ernie Kinney, myself, Ed Foote, and maybe one more on that. But yeah, I'm sure that it's in there somewhere.
So that'll be on the Caller Lab site.
Yes.
Yep.
Caller Lab has been having these sessions of Visit with the Legends, which I think is pretty cool. I haven't gotten to sit into too many of them, but I have been watching them. I got asked to be on one of those panels once because somebody dropped out, and Mike Seastrom and I were on it together, and we agreed that we were second generation legends.
Right.
We weren't where all those other guys were.
A rumor in your own time.
Yeah.
So one way that I actually became part of the square dance history of passing along the torch. So when a square dance caller heard that I'm a new caller and that I'm interested in history, the family came out to a jamboree, and I was actually pulled from the registration line to come outside, and I was presented by the caller while his family watched with a box of stuff, including the old teacher's manual and stuff, because it was important to them that the stuff that he'd used a long time, he wanted to pass along while he was still alive. And so his grandkids watched the process of me getting the stuff.
That's
exciting.
Like
nice.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. They wanted it to get in the right hands.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so there was pennies in there, and there was a hashtag thing that I think I talked about with Don from and stuff. It was really neat. Like the family really valued the stuff that I got, and they wanted to be sure that it went to somebody that would be able to use it instead of sitting in an attic somewhere and not being available.
Yeah.
Yes.
And people who get in touch, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for a good home for the material. So
I see Don holding up the similar caller's manual in it, fighting with the Zoom filter. As a newer caller, I noticed that Jim Mayo has dropped off, but both the Square Dance History Project and Jim Mayo is a new dancer and newer caller. I came in and it's like, this is all the stuff that's wrong with square dancing. I'm going to fix it. And it was great to see. It has been great to see that all of these structural problems have been identified for a long time, and nobody else has managed to fix it yet. And so it's still a long road to hoe. And I think without that, those historical resources, and I think Jim's book really nicely coalesces a lot of that into one place.
Absolutely.
It would have been a lot longer of me fumbling around in the dark trying to figure out why everybody could be so stupid.
If you're wondering what the Hall of Fame people was in a second, Clark, Bob Osgood and Sets in Order, I guess in their wisdom, decided who to inaugurate into the Hall of Fame. Some of the superstars at the time, I think probably mostly West Coast because they were there. But there were several East Coast people too.
Yep.
And Jim Mayo was one of those in the Hall of Fame.
Yep. Yeah, as was Ralph Page.
Ralph Page, Dick Ledger, Al Brundage.
Yep.
Earl Johnston.
Earl, of course.
Right. Yeah, Ralph Page got the Caller Lab, was it the Milestone Award. And this is the man who had spent years in Northern Junket sort of raising the cry against what was happening in square dancing. And he was a man of strong opinions and let them be known. But Caller Lab decided to give him the Milestone Award, and Jim was the one who presented it to him. But it took a while to get him to agree to come. And finally, the story I've heard is it was his wife who said to Ralph, show up, stand up, and shut up. And he did all three.
I never had the opportunity or the privilege of meeting Ralph, but when I was doing a monthly article in New England Square Dance Caller, he asked permission to repeat one of them in the Northern Junket, and I was pretty honored to have him do that.
Right. Tony, you would dance to Ralph.
Yeah, several times. I can't imagine him shutting up ever.
I guess I did meet him at that Caller Lab, but I never got a chance to dance to him. Clark, you had your hand up.
So, several comments. One, David hasn't made the request that he often makes in these kind of talks, which is, it's kind of like the planting the tree that you wish you did 20 years ago. We should all be documenting our current dance scene for future historians.
Yeah.
And especially with the technology that we have today, GoPros and so forth, it's not hard. The bit that you showed with Vic calling the one tip with the 10 different dance sequences, each at a different level or program. I wish Jim were still on here. I forget if it was his idea or if we had done it and he later decided a good way to make use of it, but that was the second time that had been done. We've lost the first recording, which was John Sobalski doing it, and Jim using it to make the point that if you watch it with the sound turned down and try to see which of the different sequences you feel is dancing versus not dancing, that in fact, with an appropriate caller and group of dancers, all the different levels, all the different dance programs can be dancing. And that's what I would encourage you to do with the first time you watch the one that's on the Square Dance History site that Vic did. And I think what you'll discover is all but maybe the hardest C4 dancing by those dancers and with Vic's doing the calling is generally you would consider, yes, this is dancing. Mm-hmm. And that gets rid of the challenge dancing isn't dancing saying that so many people say. Go ahead.
No, well, I was going to say the Sobalski tape that you talked about, I believe it was at your house that I got to come and see that, and Jim was there, possibly Eddie Mayall, I can't remember. And we went through trying to guess the levels with the sound off. And again, you had dancers that didn't hesitate because of the difficulty, because they knew how to dance, and it was just smooth dancing. I think Jim was able to go maybe through A1. I don't know if he'd been calling that. I was doing some calling through C2, so was able to really pick out the calls. C3, I assumed, was the next one because I couldn't figure out the calls, and C4 I figured out because there were ever slight hesitations, like you said. But yeah, it was a great example.
Right. So the funny thing, and exactly what you say, is that what we tend to do as callers watching that tape with the sound turned off is it's fun to pick out the different, oh, there's a chain reaction. Oh, that's a swing through, that's a boys run. Ooh, I don't know what that is. And you watch the patterns, and then your brain turns it back into what the calls must be. And that's actually a fun thing to have happen. The question I had, and again, I still wish that Jim had been on here because he might have a perspective, but certainly David and Tony should offer your own opinions on this. I have a sense that there's certainly a different culture somehow in modern Western versus traditional squares and contras, in that modern Western somehow grew up very rules and regulation, organized. You know, dances would have sheriffs at it that would, you know, charge you, fine you money if you did something wrong with respect to maybe how you're dressed or what you did. If you look at Color Lab, the list, the organization, even square dance clubs and how they're organized and their rules, and contra dancing seems much freer and without any of that. You know, they're the ones who are going to have the weekend and they're all skinny dipping down in the lake or who knows what. Why did they diverge so much? Is that the military influence coming in after World War II? What do you think? Or first off, do you agree with my premise?
I agree with your premise. I think I have heard fairly recently that I hadn't realized to what extent the military had an influence in Southern California, where Bob Osgood was the ringleader. But I think more generally, you can explain it looking at the time periods that what became modern square dancing had its roots in the late 40s and early 50s, which was a very buttoned up era, whereas the traditional revival really got going in the 60s with the counterculture and kids who you know they weren't, most of them weren't anarchists or you know in favor of total chaos, but they questioned authority, and they did, if they didn't see a reason for a rule, then they didn't have that rule.
Yeah, I think another thing may be that modern, certainly with the advent of Color Lab and everything getting defined. I mean, these are the specific calls that are included, and this is the definition. You know, it takes this many beats, you end facing in this direction, you know, you pass through and you don't turn around unless the caller explicitly tells you to turn back. So there's a much more codified structure built in, because you're anywhere in the world, you're learning modern, you're following the same rules. And traditional squares and contras, for a while, certainly there were regional influences. Those are rapidly disappearing as people travel. But it's more closely related to a folk dance. I think that, you know, in Southern Appalachia, in a community, you danced a certain way and you knew these dances. And as modern got so big and got so organized, and with Color Lab sort of defining what could be called and what couldn't be, you haven't, CDSS does not play anything remotely like that role in the contra and traditional squared. No one does.
And Color Lab
Correct. Yeah.
Color Lab tried to acknowledge that this was a folk activity and it was evolving, and it tried to record what was being done and evolve with it. I mean, Bob Osgood had his 25 basics or his 50 basics and his 75 basics, and by the time they were published and out, the activity with all the new calls had evolved beyond that, and Color Lab tried to stay a little bit more fluent, but it somewhat kind of backfired because it became the law. I found, interestingly, when Tony helped me discover contra dancing, and I started enjoying dancing, and one of the first things I said, well, it's on a promenade, how do you hold your hands? Western, we usually do it here. And I don't think Tony said, but others told me, it doesn't matter, hold it any way you want. And what do we wear? And it doesn't matter, anything you want. But there was a culture where 95% of the people did hold their hands the same way on a promenade or what have you. And, the women all did wear long prairie skirts, or not all of them, but the culture evolved, and the almost regulations without any regulations. It was just you wanted to keep up and be part of the crowd.
Yeah. And it did vary by region. I forget about when was that you were dancing with us? Was that 80s?
Probably maybe late 70s, definitely up through. I know I got married. My second marriage was in 86, and I met Gail 2 years before that at a contra dance at Brenner.
Okay, so you were there in the mid 80s.
Yeah.
I did a West Coast tour in 85 from Anchorage to San Diego, and at the time, Seattle, the contra and traditional square dancers were all promenading in Varsovienne position with the hands up and the gent's hand behind the lady's neck. And in Portland, Oregon, not so far away, the promenades were all the same as modern with the front skaters. I don't know if that's still true, but I have seen in my travels, I've seen minor variations like that. So it may be true what David says, that the differences are still being ironed out. But yeah, there's no central authority that says do it this way. Not CDSS does not do that. It does a lot of things, acts as a clearinghouse, but doesn't try to dictate anything.
Right.
A parallel in Western was in the Alaman left. Some parts of the country say palms up, and others say forearm grip down, and New England was a staunchly forearm grip down, but the majority of the country was palms up, and debated year after year at Color Lab as to which we should standardize. And when they finally, they standardized on palms up, and New England didn't care. They still did forearm grips, and eventually it got said with regional differences.
It's ironic that New England modern dancers held out for forearm, because the traditional grip in New England is hands up.
Yeah.
But the thing is that, I don't know, I was a hands down kind of person, mostly because, ocean wave balances or swing throughs, we're doing the forearms, and Alaman left in the Alamo style, you did a hands up to hands down for the Alamo style, and you're constantly switching depending on where you were in there, and it just didn't make sense. But that's part of the long gone argument. But I'm just pointing out, even Western has some regional differences that they acknowledge.
Your comment about costume. I mean, one of the gripes that you hear from contra dancers about modern Western square dances is, oh, they wear these silly clothes. They've got their uniforms, with the poofy skirts and the string ties, and there are certainly clubs where those dress guidelines are not being followed. But I'll say contra dancers have their own uniform. It's not I can go to a dawn dance or an all-day dance at the Peterborough Scout House in the middle of winter and watching people walk down the street and say, normal, contra dancer, normal, contra dancer, wearing their winter clothing. There is a look. And as you say, people sort of adapt to the culture they're in. So, contra dancers will sort of look down their noses at at modern square dancers. And it works the other way. Modern square dancers have told me, oh, those contra dancers, they don't even care enough about the dance to dress up for it. They wear these sweaty t-shirts and, they just, they don't bring any decency to this. So, and my big point is, guys, ladies, we have so much in common. We love moving to music. And there are bigger issues that we can debate. Let's just celebrate the differences and acknowledge you like your church, you like us, but we all like going to church, on a Saturday night. And I just hate hearing that kind of bickering. The same people who complain about modern Western square dancing are the same people who will race to line up in a contra medley. In a contra medley, you don't know what the caller is going to call. I say that's what modern square dancing is. It's just more vocabulary of calls.
Speaking
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Go ahead, Tony.
Beth tells the story that I think it was at a New England folk festival. There had the contra medley had just ended, and somebody near Beth said, "Oh my God, this is so fantastic. What did we ever do before medleys?" And Beth, without even thinking, said, "We did squares." and the person gave her a dirty look, like are you from the other network or something? But that's where we got our occasional kicks of enjoying not knowing what was coming.
David, as far as picking people out on the street by their costumes, I remember at contra dances that the dancers would say, "Oh God, there's a Western dancer," whenever they saw a towel hanging on their belt. That was
Right.
that was the clue.
The clue. Yep. I have to go. I'm in a reserved room at Dartmouth, and I'm on a parking meter in a town that really watches stuff like that. So,
wow.
So I need to go, but I really want to thank you all for being here, and send me emails with suggestions, and spread the word to your modern square dance friends about the history site, and make good use of it. Thank you. And thanks, Don, for the invitation.
Thank you so much. And maybe that's a clue. I know I've got to go too.
We're dropping like flies.
My wife wants me to clean the house. No, my personal note, my son and his girlfriend are this weekend moving from Burlington, Vermont into our house. We will no longer be empty nesters. Yeah, Tony, it's they're both islanders. They've got better jobs all waiting for them here. Her parents' house is too small for us, and ours is too big for us. Her parents' house is too small for them, and ours, since it used to be a B&B with 3 guest rooms, we didn't have much of an excuse. So privacy will be gone. Cleaning, I used to talk about when my son is here, it's like the incoming tide. Anything I'd clean up, he would mess up immediately. But hopefully with the 2 of them here, we're looking forward to having a closer contact than just every once in a while from Burlington. But yeah, I got to do some more house cleaning. Anyone else surprised we didn't have more Europeans with us today? You'd think that having a resource online of some of this history would be Hannah and Lars, I know you've been involved a lot in stuff, but probably didn't have as much chance to meet some of the old timers in this country, except when they were traveling through Sweden.
Or didn't have the chance, so it was very interesting.
But we have met Jim May once at the Color Lab.
Yes, we have. But
You
that
guys
was
were.
only Sweden.
Oh,
That was the States. Yeah.
yeah. Hopefully travel will become fun again or less risky. But Clark, you got a closing comment?
Yeah, I guess that certainly in my early days in square dancing and calling, I didn't really have much interest in history. And at a caller school or whatever, they're like, yeah, you should, part of the curriculum, you should learn this and this, and you should teach your dancers history, and you should do such and such. And then you'd kind of go, well, where can I find out any of that? And there'd usually be a couple of people would point to, well, Dorothy Shaw wrote this down, or this has this, or maybe there'd be a little squib on the internet you could quote. And I actually think a lot of that, maybe it was just one person's particular view or something, but I even back then kind of didn't quite trust it. And I think that with, Phil Jameson, the Square Dance History Project, What Tony Knows, on and on, David Millstone's talks, I think that all of that together presents a much more interesting, much more well-rounded view of what probably really happened.
Part of it is, oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, than what I was presented in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, part of it is that we know more now than we did, when I was starting out. Some of it was made up out of whole cloth, but some of it was just that we hadn't found the primary sources that we have now, and also pre-internet and all the improvements in communication. If somebody had found something better, they didn't have an efficient way of letting everybody else know.
I think a lot of it, just like Clark, I didn't care about history back then. I wanted to learn how to handle choreography. I wanted to know what the latest singing calls were. Jim Mayo and Bill Peters were planning on doing schools to teach caller coaches, to teach not just callers, but to teach caller coaches. And they did a school in Georgia and invited me down there free of charge to be an apprentice, that they could work on teaching me as a caller coach so that I could work, so that I could, in exchange for me giving them feedback on how much I thought it helped and what have you. And they gave me a topic to present once, and it was history. And oh my God, history. I don't know anything about that other than where Do Si Do and Do Pas O came from. This was 40 years ago, and I just didn't care at that time about history. But I've gotten fascinated by it as of late. Not because of the talks we've given here, maybe some of the talks because I've been fascinated by it, but and some of it is because some of it was stuff I've already lived through. But I don't know, maybe one has to be, it'd be nice if you understood your roots. I think Dan's doing a good job of appreciating what came before to help him see where he's going, but not all of us were that way. I don't know why.
I was very fortunate in that I learned from people who cared a lot about history, so I got a lot of it just from hanging around.
Ray, you're
muted.
You're muted.
For myself. There we go.
There
we go.
Years ago, I was taught how to call by Ralph Sweet back in 1965. And he had a book in those days called Create Old Time Dancing, alluded to it earlier. And there was a lot of that going on. And I think our split came a long time ago before that, in the 1800s, actually. And if we know our history, we have a chance of saving our future. I think there's a thing called sliding base syndrome. Have you ever heard of that? What it is that over time, your baseline knowledge can get corrupted, and you pass this corruption on further and further up the line. And what happens is you think what is normal now is not really what's normal years ago, and this corruption carries through and this eschews everything we have in our system. And if we know our history, we can find these areas and straighten out our problem much clearer. If we know what happened, we can change it. And our activity is suffering something terrible right now. I mean, not just because of the pandemic, but the clubs are getting smaller, older, and less skilled. And we need to find a way where these things came up, and it came out earlier. And this history project is really good stuff. And there's so much, it's so intricate what happened over the last, since the 1880s even, you know. And we made mistakes. The dance masters were much more strict and clear on definitions than callers were. And callers never needed to teach a lesson until after 1939. And all of a sudden they were put into the position of being teachers. And between 1905 and 1939, the barn dance system began to collide and deteriorate considerably. And so we walked into a strange situation. Barn dance callers wanted nothing to do with us mostly. Though most of the Hall of Famers were barn dance callers. Earl Johnson, Bob Brundage, and Dick Ledger, and Gilmore, and Gregerson, Luttrell. So this history project is really super important. I think we can learn from our history. We'd be way ahead of the game for saving our activity as it stands now. Anyways, that's my thought. The history was a great, great session. Thank you very, very much.
Ray, I've enjoyed learning a little bit about history just from you. It is the sessions that you and was it Ralph Sweet and Franny Heinz used to get together and discuss extending mental image, at least at the time, probably other things too. Who else was with that group? There were four of you.
A guy called Russ Peterson, who was a good local caller, but didn't.
I remember the name,
but I have all of Franny Heinz's 78 records.
Oh, wow.
And I have all of Ralph Sweet's sheet music. I mean, thousands of songs. But I would like to find more sheet music, actually, but not easy to do.
I'm guessing that the History Project doesn't have any Franny Heinz stuff on. You should do
really.
Something. I don't know. We could check now. It's too late.
But you just go there and search for his name.
I will.
Yeah.
I must admit, I never used the search function correctly, and so there's a lot of good things I'd learned today. Thank you again.
And you should digitize and clean up some of those and submit them, because Franny was quite the entertainer at the time. I think he got his start in vaudeville, as I recall. And
he did. He was a drummer, and in the neo vaudeville lands. Yeah.
With that, guys, I think I've got to go start the vacuum cleaner.
I have 3 of David's history videos to watch, and then get the whole darned website to dig into, and all the other things that I do on a weekend.
Have fun.
Thank you all. I'm sorry we couldn't get Jim talking a little bit more. It'd be nice to have him back sometime and see if I love when the conversations kind of when we get past the presentation and we get especially the conversation between the experienced callers going and all of the old stories. I love those.
Mm-hmm.
But
2 years ago, when shortly after we started these sessions, I asked Jim if he would do a session, and he said no, he wasn't interested. He was done with that. I asked him again a couple of months ago, and he said yeah. And now that he's got his connection and everything working, I hope to have him on soon.
Cool.
Great.
Thank you for arranging all
gem,
these.
definitely. All righty. Cheers.
Catch you all later.
Bye, guys.
Thanks.